Ace, we've been through it all right. I can't lose you again, not this time. Betrin couldn't afford to buy back his canine. They laughed until the dog's reaction changed everything. The fluorescent lights of the municipal auction house cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor as Marcus Thompson stood in the back row, his weathered hands clutching a crumpled envelope containing $247, every dollar he had managed to scrape together from odd jobs and selling his grandfather's watch at 34. The sergeant bore the invisible scars of 3 tours in Afghanistan, but today Ace's focus was entirely on the metal cage at the front of the room where his former canine partner Rex sat. Motionless. Rex was a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois whose dark eyes had once been Marcus Laughlin in the chaos of war. Together they had detected over 200 IEDs, saving countless lives during their deployment. But when Marcus was medically discharged after losing his left arm to shrapnel, Rex had been classified as surplus military equipment and transferred to local law enforcement, before eventual lining up here, lot number 47, in a government surplus auction. Next up, we have a trained police dog, announced the auctioneer, a thin man with a nasal voice, who clearly viewed Rex as nothing more than inventory. Belgian Malinois, 5 years old, fully trained in narcotics and explosives detection. Bidding starts at $500. Marcus' heart sank. His 204 wouldn't even cover the opening bid. Around him, wealthy collectors and security company representatives adjusted their bidding paddles with casual confidence. In the front row, Vincent Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Security Solutions, examined Rex like a piece of equipment he was considering purchasing for his privateer military contracts. Do I hear 500? The auctioneer called out. Several paddles went up immediately. Marcus watched helplessly as the bidding quickly escalated. $500, $750, $1. Oh. Each increase felt like another nail in the coffin of his hope to reunite with the only family he had left. Rex, meanwhile, remained perfectly still in his cage, his trained discipline keeping him calm, despite the chaos of voices and unfamiliar scents around him. But Marcus noticed something the others missed. Rex's ears would twitch slightly each time Marcus shifted his weight, as if that egg was tracking a familiar presence even in this sterile environment. $2. Blackwood called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight after feet that had become his constant companion since returning home. He had promised Rex during their last mission Betty would take care of him, but like so many promises made in war, this one seemed destined to be broken by the harsh realities of civilian life. As the bidding continued to climb beyond Marcus's reach, he noticed another man in the crowd who seemed equally invested in the outcome. Walter Hayes, a silver-haired man in his 60s, sat 3 rows ahead, his weathered hands gripping a manila folder with an intensity that suggested this was about more than acquiring a trained dog. 3-0. Walter called out, his voice steady but strained. Blackwood turned to assess his competition, his cold eyes taking in Walter's modest appearance with dismissive calculation. 4,000. He countered without hesitation. Marcus felt his chest tighten as he watched the two men engage in what was clearly more than a simple auction. There was something personal at stake. Here's something that went beyond the monetary value of a trained canine. For 500, Walter responded, and Marcus caught the slight tremor in his voice that suggested he was approaching his limit. It was then that Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just moments before. Despite knowing he couldn't win despite humiliation that would surely follow, he raised his hand. $247. He called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. The auction house fell silent. Several people took Neto stare at Marcus, and he heard the unmistakable sound of suppressed laughter rippling through the room. The auctioneer looked confused, clearly unsure how to handle such a dramatically bid in the middle of a high-stakes auction. Sir, the current bid is $4. 500, the auctioneer said slowly, as if speaking to someone who might not understand the situation. I know, Marcus replied, his voice steady, despite the heat rising in his cheeks, but that's all I have. And that dog is my partner. Became more audible now. Blackwood turned in his seat with an expression of amused contempt. Perhaps you should try a pet store, soldier boy, he said, his voice dripping with condensation. But something extraordinary happened in that moment of humiliation. Rex, who had remained motionless throughout the entire auction, suddenly stood up in his cage, his ears perked forward and his head turned with laser focus toward the back of the room where Marcus stood. Then Rex did something that lanced every person in that auction house. He let out a single piercing bark that echoed off the concrete walls like a gunshot. It wasn't the bark of an agitated animal, it was the specific alert bark that Marcus had heard hundreds of times in Afghanistan. The sound Rex made when he had found what he was looking for. Thedig's dark eyes locked onto Marcus's face across the crowded room, and his began to wag with an intensity that made his entire body vibrate. Rex pressed himself against the front of his cage, whining softly in a way that spoke of recognition, longing, and desperate hope. Well, I'll be damned. Walter muttered, his own eyes filling with tears as he witnessed the reunion playing out before him. Even Blackwood seemed momentarily taken aback by the dog's reaction. The calculated businessman was clearly unused to dealing with emotions that couldn't be bought or sold. The auctioneer, flustered by the unexpected turn of events, looked around the room uncertainly. The current bid is still $4. 500, do I hear $5,000? But the room remained silent. Every person present was watching the drama unfold between the one-armed veteran and the dog, who clearly recognized him as family. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he looked at Rex, remembering every mission they had shared, every life he had saved together, every promise he had made and broken. Walter Hayes slowly stood up from his seat, the manila folder clutched in his hands as he turned to face Marcus. The older man's eyes held a mixture of pain and determination that spoke of his own deep connection to this moment. "Son," Walter said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent oxen house. "What's your name?" "Marcus Thompson, Sir Sergeant, 1st Infantry Division." Walter nodded, his expression growing more resolute. "My daughter was Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, Military Intelligence. She was killed in Afghanistan 2 years ago while investigating illegal arms trafficking." The room remained silent as Walter opened his folder, revealing photographs and documents that he held up for our very own. "To see this dog, Rex was part of the K9 unit that worked with my daughter's team. He was there the night she died." Marcus felt his knees weaken as memories flooded back. He remembered that 9th Intelligence gathering mission that had gone wrong, the explosion that had taken Lieutenant Hayes and cost him his arm. Rex had been there, had tried to alert them to the danger, but they had been too late. "Sir, I'm sorry." Marcus began, but Walter held up a hand to stop him. "Don't apologize, son. You and Rex did everything you could, but what you don't know is that my daughter left behind evidence that Rex witnessed being hidden, evidence that could people responsible for her death." Blackwood, who had been listening with growing unease, suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous. We're here for a simple auction, not some conspiracy theory. $5. "Zero," he called out firmly, but Walter wasn't finished. "Mr. Blackwood, isn't it interesting that you're so eager to acquire a dog who might have witnessed your company's illegal activities in Afghanistan?" The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade. Blackwood's face flushed red, but before he could respond, Rex began barking again, this time with the aggressive alert pattern that Marcus recognized as a warning of immediate danger. The dog was staring directly at Blackwood, his body tense and ready for action. It was the same posture Rex had taken countless times when detecting explosives or identifying threats. "That dog is reacting to you, Mr. Blackwood," Walter continued, his voice growing stronger, "just like he reacted the night my daughter was killed, just like he tried to warn her about the people she was investigating." Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. "Rex was trying to tell us something that night," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He kept alerting on the supply convoy, but we thought he was detecting explosives. He was detecting something else," Walter replied. "He was detecting the scent of the people who were selling weapons, tough enemy people who worked for Blackwood Security Solutions." The auction house erupted in murmurs as the implications of Walter's accusations became clear. Blackwood looked around nervously, clearly calculating his options. "This is slander," Blackwood declared. "I'm here to acquire a trained animal for legitimate security purposes." But Rex's continued barking and aggressive posture toward Blackwood was telling a different story. The dog's training had taught him to identify threats, and every instinct he possessed was screaming that Blackwood represented danger. Marcus stepped forward, his missing arm making his movement slightly awkward, but his determination absolute. "Rex, easy boy," he called out, using the command that had always calmed his partner. Immediately Rex stopped barking and turned his attention back to Marcus's tail, wagging furiously. The contrast was stark: aggression toward Blackwood, love and recognition toward Marcus. "I may not have much money," Marcus said the room, "but I know this dog better than anyone here, and right now he's telling us that Mr. Blackwood is a threat." Walter opened his folder wider, revealing more documents. "Been investigating my daughter's death for 2 years. I have evidence of illegal arms sales, off cover-ups of murder, and Rex here is the only living witness to what really happened that night." The auctioneer, clearly overwhelmed by the turn of events, looked around helplessly. "I think we need to contact the authorities." "No need," came a voice from the back of the room. Detective Maria Santos of the Criminal Investigation Division stepped forward, her badge clearly visible. "We've been investigating Blackwood security for months. This auction just gave us the probable cause we needed." Blackwood's face went white as he realized he was trapped. Rex continued, touch him with the intense focus of a predator. Every muscle in the dog's body coiled and ready. "The bid stands at $4,500, the auctioneer said weakly. But it was clear that this auction had become about Mac more than money. Marcus looked at Rex, then at Walter, then at the detective. "O was already moving to detain Blackwood. Rex isn't for sale," he said quietly. "He's going home." As Detective Santos moved to arrest Blackwood, the situation in the auction house exploded into chaos. Blackwood's security team, who had been positioned discreetly around the room, suddenly revealed themselves, moving to protect their employer and create an escape route. "Nobody move," shouted one of Blackwood's men, his hand moving toward his concealed weapon. But Rex had been trained for exactly this type of situation. The moment he sensed the escalating threat, the canine's mill kicked in with a powerful leap. Rex broke through the flimsy lock on his cage and launched himself toward the nearest threat. Rex, protect Marcus, shouted the command, coming automatically despite his shock at the unfolding situation. The Belgian moved with lethal precision, taking down Blackwood's lead security operative before the man could draw his weapon. The room erupted in screams as civilians dove for cover, but Rex remained focused on neutralizing threats while protecting Marcus and Walter. Get down. Detective Santos yelled, drawing her own weapon as backup units she had called earlier burst through Thokian house doors. Blackwood, seeing his carefully constructed world collapse engulfed him, made a desperate grab for Walter's folder of evidence. You have no idea what you're interfering with, he snarled. That information dies here along with anyone who's seen it. But Walter, despite his age, held on to the folder with the determination of a father seeking justice for his murdered daughter. Sarah died for this truth, Hess said through gritted teeth. I won't let her sacrifice be meaningless. The struggle for the folder brought them dangerously close to Rex, who was still engaged with Blackwood's security team. Marcus, despite his missing arm, threw himself into the fray, determined to protect both Walter and the evidence that could finally bring justice. Rex here, Marcus called out, and the dog immediately disengaged from his current target to position himself between Marcus and Blackwood. It was then that Blackwood revealed the true extent of his desperation. You think this is just about arms dealing? He laughed bitterly. Your precious Lieutenant Hayes discovered something much bigger. She found out about the chemical weapons testing we were conducting on military working dogs. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. What? That's right, soldier boy, your beloved Rex here was one of our test subjects we've been using. Canine units to test experimental chemical agents for years. Your dog is a walking biological Han. Rex, as if understanding the conversation, began to whine impatiently. Marcus noticed for the first time that the dog seemed thinner than Harry remembered, and there was something different about his eyes, a cloudiness that hadn't been there before. Are lying, Marcus said, but doubt was creeping into his voice. Walter's face had gone pale as he processed Blackwood's words. The medical reports in Sarah's files, he whispered, the unexplained illnesses in the canine units he was investigating. That, too. Blackwood's smile was cold and triumphant. Your daughter got too close to the truth, just like you're doing now. Detective Santos, who had been coordinating with her backup team, stepped forward with her weapon trained in. Blackwood, Vincent Blackwood, you're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and violation of international chemical weapons treaties. But Blackwood wasn't finished. Arrest me all you want, but that dog is contaminated. He's been exposed to experimental nerve agents that could kill everyone in this room if he becomes agitated. The auction house fell silent, except for Rex, increasingly distressed whining. Marcus looked at his former partner with new eyes, seeing the subtle signs of illness that he had attributed to age and stress. Even if that's true, Marcus said quietly, Rex is still my partner. Whatever you did to him, whatever poison you put in his system, he's still the dog who saved my life dozens of times. Rex seemed to sense Marcus's emotional turmoil and moved closer, pressing his booty against his former handler's legs in the same comforting gesture he had countless times in Afghanistan. The question is, Detective Santos said, keeping her weapon trained on Blackwood, do we have an antidote, or are you going to let an innocent animal suffer for your crimes? Blackwood's silence was answer enough. The man who had built an empire on the suffering of others had no intention of showing mercy even to the dog who could expose his crimes. Marcus knelt down beside Rex, his remaining hand gently stroking the dog shed. Whatever happens, boy, we're together now. That's what matters. As the standoff continued, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a veterinarian who had been attending the auction to bid on equipment, stepped forward from where she had been taking cover behind a row of chairs. I need to examine that dog, she announced, her medical training overriding her fear of the dangerous situation if he's been exposed to chemical agents. Might be treatments available. Detective Santos nodded grimly. Do it, Bet. Be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with. Dr. Walsh approached Rex slowly, her experienced eyes already cataloging the subtle signs of illness. That Marcus had noticed the dog's breathing was slightly labored, his gait showed minor coordination issues, and the cloudiness in his eyes suggested neurological involvement. Easy, boy, she murmured, running her hands over Rex's body with professional efficiency. Marcus, when did you first notice changes in his behavior? I thought it was just stress from being separated from his unit, Marcus replied, his voice thick with guilt. He seemed tired, less responsive than usual, but I figured it was normal after what we'd been through. Walter, still clutching his daughter's evidence folder, opened it to reveal medical reports and photographs. Sarah documented everything, he said. Look at these bloodwork results from the K9 unit: elevated liver enzymes, neurological symptoms, immune system suppression. Dr. Walsh studied the reports while continuing her examination of Rex. This is consistent with exposure to organophosphate compounds, military-grade nerve agents, but the good news is that if we caught it early enough, there are treatments. Blackwood, who had been listening with growing desperation, suddenly lunged toward the exit. You'll never prove anything, he shouted. That evidence is circumstantial at best. But Rex's dyspodious illness still possessed the protective instincts that had made Hyman elite military working dog. With a burst of speed that surprised everyone, intercepted Black escape attempt, bringing the man down with a perfectly executed takedown that would have made his military trainers proud. Good boy Rex. Marcus said, tears streaming down his face as he watched his partner perform one last act of service. Compromised condition. Detective Santos quickly moved to secure Blackwood while her backup team swept the remaining security operatives. Vincent Blackwood, you're under arrest for multiple counts of murder, conspiracy, violation of chemical weapons, treacherous and animal cruelty. As Blackwood was led away in handcuffs, she turned back with one final venomous statement: that dog won't live to see Frio. The damage is already done. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Dr. Walsh placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Don't listen to him. Yes, Rex has been poisoned, but with proper treatment and care, he can recover. It won't be easy, and he may never be the same, but he can have a good life. Walter approached Marcus with tears in his eyes. Son, I want you to have this, he said, holding out a check. It's the money I brought for the auction, plus everything I've saved investigating my daughter's death. Use it for Rex's medical care. Marcus stared at the check. $50,000, more money than he had ever seen at one time. Sir, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, Walter insisted. Sarah would have wanted Rex to be taken care of, and besides, you two are going to help me make sure Blackwood pays for what he did. The climactic moment came when the auctioneer, who had been watching the entire drama unfold in stunned silence, finally found his voice. Given the circumstances, he announced, I'm declaring this auction null and void. The dog belongs with his rightful partner, Rex. Asif, understanding that his ordeal was finally over, walked slowly to Marcus and sat down beside him in the perfect heel position that had been drilled into both of them during their military training. Despite his illness, despite everything had endured, the bond between them remained unbroken. We're going home, boy, Marcus whispered, wrapping his arm around Rex's neck. We're finally going home. Dr. Walsh was already making plans for Rex's treatment. He'll need to run comprehensive blood work and start him on chelation therapy to remove the toxins from his system. It's going to be a long road, but I've seen animals recover from worse. Detective Santos approached with a business card. Marcus, we're going to need your testimony in the case against Blackwood, both yours and Rex's. That dog's reaction to Blackwood was what gave us probable cause for the arrest. Walter was organizing his daughter's evidence, preparing to turn it over to the authorities. Sarah's investigation documented Yusef's illegal activities with Rex testimony and this evidence. Blackwood went see the outside of a prison cell for the rest of his life. As the auction house began to empty, Marcus remained seated on the floor with Rex, both of them finally at peace. First time in years, the dog that no one else had wanted, the veteran that society had forgotten, had found each other again. Against impossible odds. You know what, Rex? Marcus said gently, stroking his partner's head. I think we're going to be okay. We've got each other. We've got people who care about us, and we've got a purpose again. Rex responded with a soft whine and pressed closer to Marcus's tail, wagging weakly but persistently. Despite the poison in his system, despite the long road to recovery ahead, the dog's spirit remained unbroken. The auction that had begun as Marcus' attempt to buy back his partner had ended with something far more valuable: justice, healing, and the restoration of a bond that had been forged in war and tested by betrayal, but ultimately proved unbreakable. 6 months after the auction house, Marcus Thompson stood in the backyard of his new home, watching Rex chase a tennis ball with something approaching his old enthusiasm. The extensive medical treatment funded by Walter's generous donation had been successful. While Rex would never fully recover from the chemical exposure, he was healthy enough to enjoy a good quality of life. The house itself was a gift from an unexpected source. The story of the veteran who couldn't afford to buy back his canine partner had gone viral, and from across the country, a veterans organization had purchased this small ranch property specifically for Marcus and Rex, complete with a large fenced yard and a specially equipped veterinary care room. Dr. Walsh had become not just Rex's veterinarian, but a close friend to Marcus. She visited weekly to monitor Rex's progress and had been instrumental in developing new treatments for chemical exposure in military working dogs, treatments that were already helping other canine veterans who had been secretly subjected to Blackwood's experiments. He's looking good today, Dr. Walsh observed as Rex successfully retrieved the ball and brought it back to Marcus with obvious pride. Walter Hayes had become like a father to Marcus, and the two men had a bond over their shared mission to honor the memory of Lieutenant Sarah Hayes. Together they had established the Sarah Hayes Foundation, which provided support for military working dogs and their handlers, both active duty and retired. Sarah would be proud, Walter said during the foundation's first annual fundraiser. Her investigation didn't just expose one man's crimes, it changed how we care for animals who serve alongside our soldiers. The trial of Vincent Blackwood had been a media sensation, with Rex serving as a key witness. The dog's trained response evidence and his clear recognition of Blackwood had provided crucial testimony that helped secure convictions on multiple charges. Blackwood was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Most importantly, Marcus had found his purpose again. Hannah worked as a counselor for other veterans struggling with PTSD, often bringing Rex along to therapy sessions. The dog's presence had a calming effect on other veterans, and his story of survival and recovery served as inspiration for those facing their own battles. People always ask me if I regret not being able to afford Rex at that auction. Marcus would tell the veterans he counseled old, but the truth is, I could him then because I was trying to buy him back. What I learned is that who was never really gone. He was just waiting for the right moment to come home. This story demonstrates how the bonds forged in service can survive betrayal and separation, and how justice and healing can emerge from the dark circumstance when people refuse to give up on each other.